Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the invisible architecture that actually shapes the cities we all live in.
I mean, have you ever just stopped and looked around your city and wondered, how does this all work? The traffic, the housing, the parks. How do millions of people manage to live and work and get around in one super complex space without it all just falling apart? Well, the answer, and this might surprise you, doesn't really start with concrete or steel. It starts with information. Yep, raw data. That's the secret ingredient that lets a city function and grow. All right, so let's dive right into this foundational stuff, urban data. Think of it like a city's DNA. It literally carries all the instructions for how our cities are built and managed. You can almost think of urban data as a city's vital signs, you know? Planners and governments, they collect everything. Population counts, economic trends, you name it. All to get a handle on how the city is doing, what it needs, and where it's going. But here's where it gets really interesting. This data isn't all one size fits all. Planners have this big challenge. They have to look at the city in two totally different ways, and often at the exact same time. First up, you've got quantitative data. This is the stuff you can count, the hard numbers, the measurable facts. It's the kind of data that lets us make standardized comparisons and actually test our ideas with real statistics. The census is a perfect example, right? With a simple chart, just like this one, you get a numerical snapshot of a whole neighborhood. Instantly, you know how many kids, how many working-age adults, and how many seniors are there. And that is absolutely crucial when you're deciding where to build things like schools or new health clinics. But, numbers don't tell the whole story. And that's where the other type of data comes in, qualitative data. This is the descriptive stuff, the information that gives us that rich, detailed understanding of what people are actually experiencing. It gets to the why behind all those numbers. So how do you even get this kind of data? Well, you have to go out and talk to people. Planners go right into the communities. They do field studies, they do interviews, and they listen directly to residents. That's how they capture the stories and all the little nuances that statistics just can't. So you see, it's like two sides of the same coin. The quantitative data gives us the what, those hard statistics. But the qualitative data, that gives us the why, the human context, the real experience. And you absolutely need both to get the full picture of a city. Okay, so you've got all this data. Now what? How do you actually turn all that information into a physical, functioning city? Well, that brings us right to our next section, the world of urban planning. Urban planning is basically the art and science of taking all that raw data, both the numbers and the stories, and using it to design our communities. It's the process that answers those huge questions like, how are we going to live? Where are we going to work? How are we going to get around every single day? And believe me, this process is not random at all. Planners use a set of core principles, kind of like a rule book for growth. And this rule book covers everything, from housing and transportation, which basically dictates how we live and move, all the way to things like recreation and greenbelts, which protect our public spaces and stop that kind of random, uncontrolled sprawl. And at the end of the day, these principles are what translate data directly into the physical layout of our neighborhoods. So for example, the census data might show, hey, we need more family housing. Then the zoning rules kick in and dictate exactly where and what kind of homes can be built to meet that need. See how it connects? Okay, now we get to the really exciting part. This is where all that data and all those planning principles come together to create the city of the future. This is where we start talking about the ultimate masterpiece, the Smart City Master Plan. Think of this as the ultimate blueprint. It's a really long-term vision for a city. It's designed to tackle huge problems like rundown areas or terrible traffic by laying out a super clear strategic path forward for the whole community. And this isn't just guesswork, There are international bodies like the ITUT, that's the UN's Agency for Information Tech, and they've actually set up a formal four-step process for cities to follow. It all starts with analyzing the data, and then it moves methodically through strategy, creating an action plan, and finally managing the whole thing. So what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's take a look at a couple of fantastic examples of cities that are putting these master plans into action right now. First up, we've got Bristol. Over in the UK, the city did this incredibly deep analysis. They looked at everything from their own city data all the way to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, just to figure out what really mattered most for their future. And this whole data-driven process led them to these 6 really clear priority themes. And this framework, it guides every single decision they make now. So let's say the city is thinking about a new transport project. It's not just about traffic anymore. They evaluate it based on its impact on the economy, the environment, and health and well-being. It's a whole new way of thinking.
Okay, now let's hop across the Atlantic because New York City is using its own master plan, it's called ONYNC 2050, to make a seriously radical shift for its future.
And when I say bold, I mean bold. The plan literally states, by 2050, New York City will no longer rely on fossil fuels and cars. Whoa, that is not a small tweak. That's a goal to completely transform the city's core infrastructure in just one generation, all guided by this master plan.
And there you have it. That's the whole journey. We went from a single, simple data point, like one answer on a census form, all the way to a massive 30-year vision for a whole metropolis. It all comes back to data being the foundation of these living, breathing, constantly evolving cities we call home. So that leaves us with one final thought for you. Is your city getting smarter? Because the future of the place you call home, well, it's being written right now in the data that's being collected today. So the real question is, what information will it need to thrive by 2050?